Victoria Adams didn't expect to walk into the wrong penthouse apartment that rainy Tuesday evening, but that single mistake was about to change everything. She clutched her portfolio tightly, mentally rehearsing her pitch for the downtown community center fundraiser she hoped to coordinate, when the private elevator doors opened directly into what appeared to be the most luxurious apartment she'd ever seen. "You're late," a deep voice called from somewhere in the vast open space. "The charity gala is in 6 weeks, and we haven't even chosen a theme." Victoria froze, raindrops still clinging to her dark hair as she hesitantly stepped forward. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been a misunderstanding." A tall man with broad shoulders and piercing blue eyes emerged from what appeared to be a home office, his attention fixed on the tablet in his hands. 600 guests. The Shaw Foundation's annual fundraiser has to outshine last year's event. I've compiled a list of potential themes, but nothing feels right. When he finally looked up, Victoria was struck by the intensity of his gaze. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it in frustration. Despite the casual attire, expensive jeans, and a navy cashmere sweater, everything about him screamed wealth and power. "You're not Margaret," he stated flatly. "No, I'm Victoria Adams." "I think I'm in the wrong place." She glanced at her phone. "I was supposed to meet with someone in apartment 3001, not 3010. The man's expression shifted from confusion to amusement. "Blake Mercer," he said, extending his hand. "And you've arrived at the right moment, even if it's the wrong apartment. My event planner just quit, and I desperately need someone to save this gala." Victoria shook his hand, feeling a strange spark at the contact. "I'm not actually an event planner. I coordinate community projects for nonprofits." "Even better," Blake said, his eyes lighting up. "This is for charity, after all. The Shaw Foundation focuses on children's education initiatives. What were you pitching at 3001? "A fundraiser for the East Side Community Center's after-school programs," Victoria admitted. Blake's smile widened. "See, it's practically fate. I'll double whatever they were going to pay you." Victoria hesitated. Her current job at a small non-profit barely covered her rent, and the community center project would have been extra income she desperately needed. But planning a gala for what was clearly a billionaire, that was beyond her experience. "Mr. Mercer, Blake," he corrected. "Blake, I appreciate the offer, but I've never planned anything on the scale you're describing." He waved away her concern. "You understand what matters: helping children. The rest is just details. I have staff who can handle logistics. What I need is someone with heart, someone who cares about more than just impressing wealthy donors with expensive centerpieces." Victoria bit her lip. The temptation was overwhelming. Her sister's medical bills were piling up, and her modest salary barely covered essentials. "I can offer you $50,000 for the project," Blake said casually, as if discussing pocket change. Victoria's jaw dropped. $50,000 for planning one event? "Is that not enough? I can go higher," she laughed nervously. "No, that would be more than enough." "Excellent, you start tomorrow." He handed her a security card. "This will get you up to the penthouse. 9 o'clock sharp. We have a lot of work to do." Before Victoria could fully process what was happening, she found herself back in the elevator, clutching the security card and wondering what she'd just agreed to. The next morning, Victoria arrived at Blake's penthouse precisely at 9. Dressed in her most professional outfit, a simple black pencil skirt and emerald blouse that her sister Lily had insisted made her eyes pop. Blake was on a call when she entered, pacing near floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. He acknowledged her with a nod before returning to what sounded like a tense business negotiation. "The Nakamura deal isn't optional, Jonathan. Make it happen." He ended the call and turned to Victoria. "Sorry about that. Shipping logistics crisis. Coffee, please," she said, setting down her laptop bag on the massive white marble kitchen island. As Blake prepared espresso from a machine that looked more complicated than her car's engine, Victoria took in her surroundings more carefully. The penthouse was undeniably luxurious but surprisingly understated minimalist furniture in neutral tones, abstract art that looked valuable but wasn't ostentatious. Only the sweeping views and sheer size of the space betrayed the owner's wealth. "So," Blake said, sliding a delicate cup toward her, "tell me about your background." Victoria took a sip of the perfect espresso before answering. "I have a master's in nonprofit management. I've spent the last 3 years working for smaller organizations, primarily focusing on community engagement and fundraising for educational initiatives. And before that, I put myself through school working as an administrative assistant at various companies," she admitted. "Nothing glamorous." Blake studied her with interest. "Why nonprofits? With your organization's skills and presence, you could make triple the money in the corporate world," Victoria smiled. "My sister Lily was diagnosed with leukemia when we were teenagers. A local charity helped our family with expenses not covered by insurance. I promised myself I'd pay that forward someday." Something in Blake's expression softened. "How is your sister now?" "In remission, thankfully, though she still needs regular checkups. She's studying to become a nurse." Blake nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of perspective I need for this gala. Now, let me show you what we're working with." He led her to his office, where digital blueprints of an extravagant hotel ballroom were displayed on a wall-mounted screen. "The Shaw Foundation was my grandmother's passion project. She believed every child deserves quality education regardless of their circumstances. When she passed 5 years ago, I took over the foundation alongside running Mercer Industries." Victoria had heard of Mercer Industries, a shipping and logistics empire with global reach, but hadn't connected it to the man standing beside her. The realization of just how wealthy and powerful Blake was made her momentarily dizzy. "This year's fundraising target is $5 million, Blake continued casually. "Last year we raised just over 4, but enrollment in our scholarship programs has increased." $5 million, Victoria repeated faintly. "From one event," Blake grinned. "The gala is where we secure the major donations, yes. It's also why it needs to be spectacular without being wasteful. Every dollar spent on the event is one less dollar going to children." For the next several hours, they brainstormed themes and approaches. Victoria was surprised by Blake's genuine engagement in the planning process. This wasn't just a rich man's vanity project. He knew details about the programs, had visited schools supported by the foundation, and could name scholarship recipients from years past. By late afternoon, they'd settled on Constellation of Dreams as the theme, an elegant astronomy-inspired concept that would transform the ballroom into a stylized night sky, with each table representing a different constellation connected to stories about achievement and aspiration. "This is brilliant," Blake said, reviewing Victoria's sketches. "It's sophisticated enough for the donor crowd but meaningful rather than superficial." Victoria couldn't help the pride blooming in her chest. "We could feature stories of scholarship recipients at each table matching their achievements and goals to the constellation's mythology." Blake's eyes lit up. "And instead of traditional centerpieces, we could have small telescopes that guests can take home, practical, educational, and aligned with our theme." "Exactly," Victoria exclaimed. "And perhaps donations could be visualized as stars added to a digital sky projected on the ceiling throughout the evening." The excitement between them was palpable. Victoria hadn't expected to enjoy this project so much or to find Blake Mercer so different from the cold, calculating billionaire she'd anticipated. "I think we've earned dinner," Blake announced, checking his watch. "There's a great Italian place around the corner." Victoria hesitated. "I should probably get going. I have some research to do for tomorrow." "The research can wait. You need to eat, and I need to tell you about our most challenging donors so you're prepared." His tone was professional, but there was something in his eyes that made Victoria's heart beat a little faster. "Okay, dinner it is." The restaurant was exactly the kind of place Victoria could never afford: intimate, elegant, with a wine list longer than her resume. But Blake steered them away from business talk almost immediately. "Tell me something not on your resume, Victoria Adams," he said after they'd ordered. She laughed. "Like what? Something unexpected. A secret talent, a childhood dream, anything?" Victoria twirled her wine glass thoughtfully. "I can name every constellation in the night sky. My dad was an astronomy professor before he passed away. We spent countless nights on our roof with his telescope." Blake's expression was genuinely interested. "That explains why you lit up at the theme idea." "Your turn," she prompted. "Something not in the Bloomberg profile." Blake's laugh was surprisingly warm. "I build wooden boats in my spare time, small ones, models, really. My grandfather taught me when I was a boy. It's precise, methodical work that requires complete focus." "A billionaire who makes model boats." "That is unexpected. Being a billionaire is just my job, Victoria. It's not who I am." As dinner progressed, Victoria found herself increasingly drawn to Blake. Beneath the powerful businessman exterior was a thoughtful man with a dry sense of humor and genuine passion for his grandmother's foundation. By the time they finished dessert, the professional boundaries between them had softened noticeably. Over the following weeks, Victoria threw herself into planning the gala. She worked closely with Blake's staff, visited venues, interviewed caterers, and spent countless hours in Blake's penthouse refining details. Sometimes they worked late into the evening, ordering takeout and losing track of time as they discussed not just the event but their lives, dreams, and perspectives on everything from politics to music. Victoria tried to maintain professional distance, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. Blake was nothing like she'd expected. He worked harder than anyone on his team, remembered personal details about his employees' lives, and approached the foundation's mission with genuine dedication. 3 weeks before the gala, Victoria was at the penthouse finalizing the seating chart when Blake returned from a business trip to Singapore, looking exhausted but pleased to see her. "How was your flight?" she asked, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened at his presence. "Long. Productive." He loosened his tie. "I brought you something." From his briefcase, he produced a small box, which he handed to her with an almost shy smile. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a pendant shaped like the Cassiopeia constellation, tiny diamonds marking each star. "Blake, I can't accept this," she said softly, though her fingers traced the exquisite piece. "It's not expensive," he lied transparently. "I saw it and thought of you, no ulterior motives." Victoria looked up at him, conflicted. "It's beautiful, but please. Consider it a thank you for saving this event. The committee is thrilled with everything you've done." Reluctantly, Victoria allowed him to fasten the necklace around her neck, his fingers brushing against her skin and sending shivers down her spine. "Perfect," he murmured, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, clearing his throat. "We should review the auction items." Victoria nodded, trying to refocus on work while acutely aware of the necklace resting against her collarbone and the growing feelings she couldn't afford to acknowledge. The next morning, Victoria was cataloging auction items when her phone rang. It was Lily, and she sounded upset. "Vic, the insurance denied my last round of tests. They're saying it wasn't medically necessary, but Dr. Kaufman insisted we do them after my blood work showed those anomalies." Victoria's stomach dropped. "How much is it?" $8,000. "I've been putting extra shifts at the cafe, but even with that." "Don't worry about it," Victoria said firmly. "I'll figure it out." With her first payment from Blake, she'd paid off most of their existing medical debt, but she'd been counting on the final payment to cover Lily's tuition next semester. After hanging up, Victoria sat at her temporary desk in Blake's home office, trying to focus on work while mentally calculating how to stretch her finances. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice Blake enter until he spoke. "Bad news?" he asked gently. Victoria forced a smile. Nothing work-related, just a personal matter. Blake's expression remained concerned. Victoria, we've spent nearly every day together for a month. I can tell when something's wrong. She hesitated before answering. My sister's insurance denied coverage for some recent tests. It's a significant amount, but we'll manage. She straightened some papers. Now about the lighting design, how much? Blake interrupted. Blake, that's not how much, Victoria, she sighed. $8,000. Without hesitation, Blake pulled out his checkbook. Consider it an advance on your final payment. No, Victoria said firmly. I appreciate the offer, but this is my personal problem. I don't want to mix business with whatever this is becoming between us. Blake set down the checkbook, his expression serious. This isn't about our personal relationship. You're doing exceptional work and you deserve to focus on it without worrying about your sister's health. Take the advance. After a moment of internal struggle, Victoria nodded. Thank you, I'll pay it back if I don't earn it. Blake's smile returned. If the committee's reaction to your plans is any indication, you'll earn twice what we agreed upon. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them. Victoria found herself increasingly aware of Blake's presence, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, how he absently rolled up his sleeves when concentrating, the gentle way he guided her elbow when they walked together. 1 week before the gala, disaster struck. Victoria received a frantic call from the venue manager. A pipe had burst in the hotel, causing significant water damage to the ballroom. It would be impossible to repair everything in time. When she delivered the news to Blake, he remained surprisingly calm. Options? He asked simply. Victoria had already been making calls. There's another hotel with a suitable ballroom available, but it's significantly smaller. We'd have to cut the guest list by a third, which would impact donation potential. Not acceptable. Next. The Natural History Museum's main hall could work with our theme, but they typically book a year in advance. Blake nodded. Call them, use my name. Blake, even with your name, try, he insisted. What else? Victoria hesitated. There's one other option. The observatory would be perfect for our theme, but they don't typically host private events of this size. Blake's eyes lit up. The observatory is perfect. Make it happen. But Victoria, he said, taking her hands in his, you've created something extraordinary here. We'll find a way to make it work. I believe in you. The sincerity in his voice made her heart swell. Before she could respond, his phone rang, another business emergency requiring his attention. The following days were a whirlwind of rearranging, negotiating, and problem-solving. Through some miracle, and Blake's considerable influence, the observatory agreed to host the gala. Victoria barely slept, coordinating the massive shift in plans while ensuring every detail was perfect. The night before the gala, Victoria was at the observatory overseeing final preparations when Blake arrived with dinner. You need to eat, he said, setting up an impromptu picnic on a table near the massive telescope. Victoria sank gratefully into a chair. Everything's finally in place. I still can't believe we pulled this off. I can, Blake said, pouring her a glass of wine. You're remarkable, Victoria. Under the domed ceiling, with stars visible through the glass panels above, the moment felt magical. They ate and talked, the stress of the past weeks melting away as they laughed about the various crises they'd overcome together. I have something to confess, Blake said as they finished their meal. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Should I be worried? Margaret never quit. At Victoria's confused expression, he continued, my event planner, she was on maternity leave. The day you arrived at my penthouse, I just received her email saying she wouldn't be returning after her baby was born. Victoria set down her wine glass. So you lied to me. I took a chance, Blake corrected. I could tell from our 5-minute interaction that you had something special, passion, intelligence, creativity. I needed that for the foundation, not just another corporate event planner. Why are you telling me this now? Blake moved closer, his eyes serious. Because tomorrow night will be a success because of you. And because I don't want any secrets between us when I ask you to dinner after it's over a real dinner, not as my employee or consultant, but as someone I've grown to care for deeply." Victoria's heart raced. "Blake." "You don't have to answer now," he said quickly. "Just think about it." The night of the gala arrived with perfect weather-clear skies, allowing the stars to shine brightly through the observatory's glass dome. Victoria wore a midnight blue gown that sparkled subtly when she moved, the Cassiopeia necklace gleaming at her throat. She directed staff, greeted early arrivals, and tried to calm her nerves. When Blake arrived, he took her breath away. His tuxedo was impeccably tailored, emphasizing his broad shoulders and confident posture. But it was the warmth in his eyes when he spotted her that made her flush. "You look stunning," he said, his voice low as he approached. "So do you," she managed. Nervous, she nodded. $5 million is a lot of pressure." Blake smiled. "Forget the money for a moment. Look around." Victoria followed his gaze. The observatory had been transformed into an enchanted celestial landscape. Stars projected on the walls complemented the real ones visible through the dome. Each table represented a different constellation, with custom lighting creating the star pattern above each setting. Small telescopes served as both centerpieces and take-home gifts, while digital screens discreetly displayed information about scholarship recipients. "You did this," Blake said softly. "You created something meaningful and beautiful that honors my grandmother's vision perfectly." Before Victoria could respond, guests began arriving in earnest, and the evening was underway. She circulated the room, ensuring everything ran smoothly while Blake charmed donors and introduced scholarship recipients, who shared moving stories about how the foundation had changed their lives. By midnight, the digital constellation of donations projected on the dome had far surpassed their goal. Blake took the stage for closing remarks, his presence commanding the room effortlessly. "Tonight, we've raised an unprecedented $7 million for children's education," he announced to thunderous applause. "But numbers alone don't capture what we've accomplished. Each star in our constellation represents a child who will receive the education they deserve." His eyes found Victoria at the back of the room. "I'd like to thank the remarkable woman who made tonight possible." Victoria Adams stepped in at the last minute and created an event that perfectly captures the spirit of the Shaw Foundation. "Victoria, would you join me?" Surprised, Victoria made her way to the stage, conscious of all eyes upon her. Blake took her hand as she reached him, the warmth of his touch sending electricity through her. "Victoria didn't just plan a party," Blake continued, still holding her hand. "She created an experience that reminds us all why we're here, to reach for the stars and help others do the same." As applause filled the room, Blake whispered, "Have dinner with me tomorrow?" Victoria looked up at him, at this man who had entered her life by accident but now felt essential to it. "Yes," she whispered back. The following evening, Blake took Victoria to a rooftop restaurant with an unobstructed view of the night sky. After they ordered, he reached across the table to take her hand. "I have a proposition for you," he said. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Another gala. Something more permanent. The foundation needs a director of outreach, someone to coordinate with schools, develop new programs, and yes, occasionally plan events." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "The position offers competitive salary, benefits, and the opportunity to make a real difference." Victoria's pulse quickened. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a career doing what you love. The foundation would be lucky to have you." She studied his face. "And us? Would you be my boss?" "No," Blake smiled. "The foundation has an independent board. I'm just the primary donor and figurehead, no conflict of interest." Victoria felt a smile spreading across her face. "In that case, I accept the job and the date." "I was hoping you'd say that," Blake said, his eyes filled with promise. He reached into his pocket and produced a small gift box. "One more thing." Inside was a charm for her necklace, a tiny silver telescope that matched the gala centerpieces. "To remember our first project together," he explained as he fastened it to her necklace. I'm hoping it will be the first of many. Victoria touched the charm gently. You know, when I walked into the wrong apartment 6 weeks ago, I never imagined it would lead to this. I knew the moment I saw you, Blake admitted. Something told me you were exactly who I'd been looking for, even if neither of us realized it yet. Under the stars that had brought them together, Blake leaned across the table and finally kissed her a tender, promising kiss that felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. 1 year later, the Shaw Foundation held its annual gala at the observatory, again Victoria's choice, now that she was officially the foundation's director of outreach. The theme was Full Circle, celebrating the cyclical nature of giving and receiving. As she adjusted a display highlighting the foundation's achievements under her leadership, including a new scholarship program for aspiring nurses, inspired by Lily Blake appeared at her side. "Ready for the big announcement?" he asked, looking handsome in his tuxedo. Victoria nodded, smoothing the silk of her emerald gown. "The board is thrilled about the expansion. 10 new schools next year is ambitious, but we can do it." "That's not the announcement I meant," Blake said with a mysterious smile. Before Victoria could question him further, guests began arriving, and she was swept up in hosting duties. The evening progressed beautifully, with donations exceeding even last year's record. When Blake took the stage for his speech, Victoria watched from the side, filled with pride for how far they'd come professionally and personally. Their relationship had deepened over the past year into something solid and true. Lily's health had stabilized, she'd finished nursing school and with Blake's connections, had secured a position at a prestigious hospital. "Tonight marks 1 year since we first gathered under these stars," Blake began. "Thanks to your generosity and the tireless work of our team, particularly our brilliant Director of Outreach, Victoria Adams, we've expanded our programs to reach more children than ever before." Applause filled the room as Blake continued, "But tonight, I want to share something personal." His eyes found Victoria. 1 year ago, a remarkable woman walked into the wrong apartment and changed my life forever. She showed me that wealth means nothing without purpose, and success means nothing without someone to share it with. Victoria's heart began racing as Blake left the stage and walked toward her, microphone still in hand. "Victoria Adams planned an event that changed countless lives," he continued, stopping directly in front of her. "But she didn't know she was also planning my future." With the entire room watching, Blake dropped to one knee and produced a small velvet box. "Victoria, you walked into the wrong apartment but straight into my heart. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Victoria's eyes as she looked down at the ring, a stunning diamond surrounded by smaller stones in the pattern of the Cassiopeia constellation. "Yes," she whispered, then louder for the microphone, "Yes." As Blake slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, the dome above them projected a magnificent display of shooting stars, planned in secret for this very moment. Later that night, as they stood alone on the observatory's balcony, Victoria leaned into Blake's embrace. "You planned this all along, didn't you?" she asked, admiring how her ring caught the starlight. Blake kissed her temple. "Let's just say I recognized a cosmic opportunity when it presented itself. Sometimes the universe sends exactly what you need, even if it arrives at the wrong address." Under the vast canopy of stars that had witnessed their beginning, Victoria turned in Blake's arms to kiss the man who had mistaken her for a party planner and in doing so, had found the love of his life.